Neil Swanson here. Welcome back to High Gain Guitar Academy, and today we're gonna do Metal Licks 101, okay? So we know that metal was kind of forged in the fires of classical music. The virtuosity of the players in classical, the intensity, there's a lot of darkness in classical, and that's kind of made its way into metal music and culture as well. Now, a couple things to mention as we're getting started is the amount of gain you're gonna want. So metal, typically lots of gain, lots of distortion, okay? So, but it can also get a little bit noisy when you stop, right? So if you have a noise gate pedal or function on whatever you're using, use that. It can really cut down on all that extra noise in between, stops. So anyway, noise gate, an important tool. Also, if you're in there twisting knobs and pressing buttons on your amps or effects boards or whatever you got, typically a good metal guitar tone has the mid-range scooped out a little bit, like turn some of the mids down. You can take some of those mids out and it'll sound a little bit more metal. There's going to be more moments of fast alternate picking and palm muting as well. It's more intense, that's kind of the word here. Well, let's get into it. For these examples, I'm going to use the E minor pentatonic, okay? It's one of the most common keys and scales that we tend to play rock and metal in, so that's what we're going to use. Now, a lot of you may have extended range or tuned down guitars, and all these things will still apply to that. I'm just going to stay in standard E tuning for the video, but yes, feel free to make it even heavier with your tuned down guitars, okay? Now, one of the most important things you're going to need when you're playing metal, whether it be rhythm or lead, is consistent, fast alternate picking, okay? So I like to do this by palm muting. I think that will kind of clean it up so you can hear the notes more individually. And we're going to start slow, trying to keep it as even and on the beat as we can. I can always do flat picking, right, where the pick just hits the string flat on, but if you angle the pick a little bit, not a lot, but just a little bit, it helps to slice its way through the strings, allowing for easier up and down alternate picking. When you flat pick, it can easily kind of get caught up on the string. So a little bit of angle when you're, speed picking can really help. Now that's all low string stuff. Let's talk about doing that sort of thing in leads. One of the first things I want to show you is a 4-note pattern that's going to require some alternate picking. We're going to get up here in the key of E on the pentatonic scale. I'm going to do 15-12 on the little E string. We're going to do that alternate picking down, up. Now we're going to do the same thing on the B. I don't typically practice just for speed. I try to practice for clarity and consistency. I want to play it clean so you can hear every note, and I want to do that every time. Okay, consistency. As you get those things down, you will just get faster. And then at that point, we can focus on really tailoring that speed. But at first, just play clean and consistent. We want our picking hand and our fret hand to sync up, okay? So as I pass every note, everything needs to be exactly on par. Now that example, I was lifting my fingers really far from the neck to, elaborate on what I was trying to say, but you really want to keep your movements when playing fast, especially with metal leads, small. There was a video I did early on where I talked about having a low ceiling, basically meaning you can't pick your fingers too far up all the way from the fretboard. You got to keep them really close, act like there's a low ceiling above them, and they can't stand up very high, okay? They have to stay really close to the fretboard. Now you notice when you start speeding up, it can be difficult to move our pointer from string to string, right? So one thing I use is barring when possible. If the lick I'm doing uses the same low note, in this case we're using the 12 on both strings, I'm just going to bar the 12 of the E and the B with my pointer. And now I'm going to do that same lick but never have to move my pointer finger. And now another thing you can do, instead of working that ring finger as much as I'm doing, I can actually do 2 different fingers to kind of split up the load, okay? So let's say I use the ring finger for the E and then the middle finger for the B string. That can really help to increase your stamina. You don't want to run out of steam and, you know, like the first couple seconds or the first song, and you have like, you know, 10 more songs to do. So learning how to pace yourself and delegate out responsibilities to your fingers and split up the workload is an important factor in metal guitar. Now you can also change up these shapes. This is just a basic technique I'm showing you. You can use your pinky to stretch out, do some different shapes. The main focus here is picking, you know, consistently, accurately, and, you know, if you can get the speed up fast. Now this seems like a pretty basic thing to practice, but metal being about more intensity and speed, practice running up and down your minor pentatonic scale, your basic blues scale. Because of the way that you know, you're alternate picking through every string, and you can build up the speed. You never have to move your lowest note. It's always going to be the 12. So it's a pretty consistent way to work on, you know, speeding through scales and getting the shred down, okay? Now something else I like to do to clean up the notes that I mentioned earlier is I like to palm mute it, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to palm mute and run through that pentatonic scale. See how the palm mute gives it almost like a staccato sound, like it's every note is rather than just blurring together, right? So you can take that and practice, you know, building your speed and also changing up the pattern. Let's say I do like a 3 strings, come back 1, 3 strings, come back 1. Watch this. Now you can also use the barring on this one that I talked about earlier. I could do it over, you know, 3 or 4 strings. Let's try doing it backwards now. Let's try going from the high note back down. You see with that pointer barring there, it's so much easier to move fast because I'm not having to move the pointer, and also control any extra noise from the strings. I'm kind of holding them all still as I'm moving across them. Now as you build up speed, it starts to sound really cool, but you really got to lock up the picking in the fret hand, okay? So that intensity is going to be lost if it's sloppy. Another thing that you want to do in metal is make ugly, weird noises, okay? So sometimes hitting these dissonant sounds that typically wouldn't go together is what you want. So let's say I were to hold the 12 of the B and the 15 of the G string and hit those 2 strings together. Typically that would not be a desirable sound, but in metal it just works. It sounds aggressive and over the top and kind of wild. So yeah, that's what you want. And all that is I'm playing a selected note, and then on the next string, that same note 1 fret down. So it's 1 fret less than the selected note. So if I'm on the little E string and I'm playing the 12 of the little E, and then I were to hold the B string at the 14, because that's 1 note less than the E. It's a very metal thing to do, and you can do that anywhere on the neck. Like I said, just making noises in metal is often a cool thing to do. I think if you have a whammy bar, you can do all kinds of things with like harmonics, like natural harmonics, pinch harmonics. The last thing I'm going to show you here is a diminished run. Okay, now diminished is like another, you know, name for it's another mood. So if major sounds happy, minor sounds sad, diminished undoubtedly sounds spooky. Okay, it just has like a sort of an evil connotation to it. So what we're going to do is a sort of classical diminished run, starting from the 12 of the E, working our way down. Now this run will use the same spacing on every string we just start a fret lower each time. So we're gonna go 12 down to 9. Notice I'm gonna use my pinky on the 12 so I have a good stretch. My pointer is on the 9 of the little E. Here we go. Now I'm gonna move to the next string, the B, 1 fret lower. So now instead of 12-9, it's 11-8. Now when I move to the G string, remember the G and the B have that 1 fret difference, so I'm gonna have to move 1 extra fret. So instead of moving to the 10, I'm gonna move to the 9. It's gonna go 9-6. Then we're back on track with moving down 1 fret each time. So after 9-6 on the G, then we go to the D, it's gonna go 8-5. Then on the A, you're gonna go 7-4. And then on the E, 6-3. And then back to. Let's try it from the top. Little E, 12-9. Pause it and work on that a little bit and come back if you need to. I know it's a lot of notes and a lot of things all at once, but that is a very useful sort of shape in metal, and you can move that around wherever you want, but that's just a very basic, jump off point for the metal sounds. That diminished kind of feel is what, the technical word is, I guess, for those. Spooky. I think the other point that is important in metal is the rhythm section, which, like I said, drop tune, heavier sounding guitar parts, but don't forget that there's going to be a lot of starts and stops, especially when you get into these metal subgenres like gent and stuff like that. There's a lot of just sharp stops. I never even changed notes. That was just an open E power chord, but I was just giving you an idea of the rhythms. There's a lot of timing and technicalities in that kind of music, so that's probably a conversation for another day, but at least I've given you some basics on metal licks, right? Because this was Metal Licks 101. So hopefully that made you a little bit more metal. Work on it, and best of luck to you. We'll see you next time.